Hi guys, my name is Edwin Ritchie. I'm the president of Canadian Drilling School International. I'm also an IWCF instructor and assessor. Welcome to our new well control online course. This is the first unit in the video and it's our free introduction. Now the course is split into 3 modules and will consist of 30 units covering over 30 hours of lectures. So the 3 modules are, first of all, we're going to start off with the principles and procedures of well control. Then we'll go on to well control equipment. And lastly, we'll do the practical simulator stuff. And wish to take the whole course, we are offering a 50% discount for the beta version. And this will only be available until the official launch date of the course in January the 1st, 2019. So we will release a minimum of 3 units each month, and we'll give you a choice of 3 different ways of accessing the course. First of all, you can purchase the units individually without any obligation for further purchase, or you can purchase a subscription and receive up to 3 units each month, or you can save lots of money and with a one-time payment and receive then 3 units each month. Now, by purchasing a unit, we mean that you're purchasing the right to access the lecture for up to 72 hours. The 72-hour clock starts immediately you start the unit. So the first option was to purchase each 1 to 2 hour unit individually at a cost of $7.49 USD. Now, since each unit builds on the previous one, we advise you, if you want to take the whole course, that you do not skip any units, that you take them in the correct order. And that applies especially to level 2 candidates, but also to level 3 and 4, where we recommend that the level 2 be used as a refresher. If you do purchase this option, then the entire course will cost you $224.70. You, for that, receive 72 hours access to each unit after purchase, and the clock starts as soon as you start the unit. Now, you must complete the whole thing within 30 days of purchasing, so you can choose any 72-hour block of time within the 30 days, but you must complete it all within 30 days. Now, for the price, you have access to download a PDF with all the lecture slides on it. That's for yours to keep at no extra cost. It's yours to keep, but not to share. You also have access to the text at a 50% discount, so it'll be yours for $25. The regular price is $50. And you'll have access to the lecture notes and test questions and everything at the end of each module. And again, you'll get 50% discount on that, so that'll be $5. Now, the text and the lecture notes and test questions and everything are not a requirement, so they're just extra. So you can take the course without purchasing them. So you can purchase as many or as few units as you like with no obligation to purchase any more. The second option was to purchase a subscription for the entire course, and it costs you 10 easy payments of $14.99, and for that you receive access to each unit as it's developed over the next 10 months. So if you choose this option, the total cost of the course would be $149.90 that you pay over 10 months. You will receive access to 3 new units each month. The payments will be automatically deducted from your credit card, and it's a term period, so it will not exceed 10 months, so you don't have to worry about having to stop the subscription. You'll also receive an email reminding you of all the upcoming deductions. You're given 72 hours access to each unit, and the clock again doesn't start till you actually start the unit, and you have 30 days to complete the lectures. You also have a downloadable PDF of the lecture slides for yours to keep, no extra cost, and you have available to you 50% off offer on the textbook and 50% offer on the lecture notes. All prices are in US dollars. The third option is to purchase the whole course entirely at the beginning for a cost of $125 and receive the units as they are developed over a maximum of 10 months. If you choose this option, the cost will be $125, and for that you get your PDF of the lecture slides, you get the text entirely free, and you get the lecture notes and the test questions and everything, all free. So no extra charge for those. And you will receive access to 3 new units each month. 72-hour clock starts as soon as you start each unit, and you're given 30 days to complete each unit block of lectures. So the entire course will take no more than 10 months. It depends on when you started. If you started in December, for example, you can do it all in 1 month. So it just depends on when you start. Frequent questions: if I purchase a unit, do I get unlimited access to it? And the answer obviously is no. You receive 72 hours access to streaming video. You may download and print the PDF material, but you may not share it. It's yours to keep but not share. What if you don't complete the unit within 72 hours? Well, we recommend that you allocate a minimum of 3 hours to each unit. And so before starting a unit, make sure you have this minimum of 3 hours within the next 3 days. So it doesn't have to be 1 3-hour block of time. It can be 1 hour a day for 3 days. Now, if for some reason you're completely unable to find the time required within the 30-day period, then unfortunately you will need to repurchase that unit. Can I share the course with other people? No, not unless you have a multiple user license. Do I receive a well-controlled certificate? No. In order to obtain a well-controlled certificate, you need to attend a certified course in a certified training center with an invigilated exam. So which level do we teach here, and what stack? And the answer is we teach levels 2, 3, and 4, and we teach both surface and subsea stacks. So we would recommend that everybody take the subsea. You might as well, give you more options. Do you need high-speed internet? Yeah, the course is filmed in high-definition video. It's 1080p video, so you do need broadband internet. Are we going to offer other courses? And the answer is, well, we've already started on our stacked pipe course, which will be available in early 2019. Depending on how it's received, we will then decide whether we offer other courses. Can you take the course in less than 10 months? You can, depending on when you start. But at the moment, we're only guaranteeing that it'll take, we will have the course ready by December 31st. So it depends on how soon to December the 31st you sign up, then how much time you have. Will you get a certificate from this course? No, the course is designed as a preparatory course only. We conceived it to be part of the ongoing training that OGP recommended. They recommended that we don't just go to every 2 years go to a course for 1 week, that it should be ongoing. And so we believe that this could be taken as an ongoing type of training. In addition to that, there's a big demand for people who want to have private lessons or mentoring. And so this is a way that I can do that on a larger scale. So by taking this course, you should be able to make full use of your time during your formal training time. When you go to a real course, you'll be quite competent and you won't be worrying about whether you're going to pass or not. And so this will allow you to concentrate on learning new ideas maybe that the instructor might have. So it is hoped then that once you take this course, you'll be so competent that you'll be able to pass like a boss. So what should I learn in this unit? Well, number one, the importance of well-controlled training to your career. The need for examinations when taking formal well-controlled courses. So why do I need to take examinations? I hate them. I don't do well in exams, so why do I need to do it? The advantages of a competent workforce. The goals of well-controlled training. What are we trying to achieve? Why well-controlled training has changed recently in the last few years. What 5 levels of well-controlled training there are and who should take them. What a well-controlled incident is and how it can affect you. What is meant by risk and how it can be managed. What are the advantages of risk management? Why emergency drills are important. What's the purpose of an emergency drill? Examples of emergency drills. How often emergency drills should be repeated. The consequences of not performing emergency drills. What management of change entails. When do we need to manage changes? The purpose of management of change checklists. Contingency planning and reporting. The main functions of drilling mud. The main properties of drilling mud. Well-controlled consequences of inadequately cleaning the hole. The definition of pressure. So why do we need to take well-controlled training in the first place? Well, OGP says that we must be competent to do the job tasks within our job description. And they tell us this includes demonstrating that we possess the relevant education, the skills, and the behaviors. It involves both written and practical examinations, and it means you will increase your knowledge on how to avoid a well-controlled incident. You will know how to carry out your job tasks efficiently and safely. You will be helping create a safe working environment for both you and your colleagues, and also your employer and the industry. You'll be helping improve the overall competence of the industry. So a competent workforce means a more pleasant working environment. You will gain the trust of your stakeholders, and that includes the legislators, the landowners, and members of the public. There'll be less overregulation from nervous lawmakers, and we'll be seen to be making significant improvements in personnel competence. We'll regain corporate and industry image, making it easier to attract new employees and investors. Ensures regulatory compliance, and that's from a better educated workforce, requiring more robust training and examinations. And it means checking personnel's qualifications, reduce severity of the impact of a well control. So even we don't stop a well controlled event, we can reduce the severity. Providing ongoing well controlled education and training, which we're hoping this is part of. That includes online and on the job training. Increasing the competency of our industry through well-trained personnel. Keeping the trust of stakeholders with fewer or less severe well-controlled incidences. Avoiding overregulation from uninformed legislators so that the industry can be seen to be more competent with an improved reputation. Upholding our responsibility, and that's to our colleagues, our co-workers, and our neighbors. Job requirements should be that it should be set in every personnel's job description. There should be a periodic review of all the task performances. We should be verifying individuals' competence, including checking for valid certification, checking and keeping track of training records, performing knowledge gap analysis, which means that we do checking to see what the person knows and then provide the training to fill in the gaps in that knowledge. Providing appropriate training for all personnel, including all job tasks in their job description. So there should be training for every single thing that they do. And providing remedial training if necessary. So if we find something missing in someone's skills, then we provide the training to fill that gap. Checking CVs and work history. periodic performance reviews, unscheduled emergency drills, providing training on new equipment before it's commissioned. So we don't just turn up with new equipment and not know how to use it. We should have the appropriate training. And helping in the recruitment of new personnel. So why has well control training changed in the last few years? Well, it's in response to the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, known as OGP, and it's in response to what happened on the Deepwater Horizon incident. They took a look at the state of well-controlled training at the time, and they came up with a number of recommendations. So they looked at the curricula of the main well-control bodies, and that included IWCF and IADC. They made these recommendations on existing training, and they included increasing from 3 levels to 5 levels of training. And they said the training should be progressive through levels 2 to 4. So no longer are you able to just walk off the street and take driller's level or supervisor's level training. You must start at level 2 and work your way through. Also, they asked for more robust invigilated exams to try and cut down on the cheating. Better practical assessments, something that's more relevant to the working on the rig. Better trained and more competent instructors and assessors. We've all heard the horror stories, what people have encountered worldwide. And the training to be more job appropriate. They also included additional subject matter that included barrier management, which meant identifying the barriers to flow, identifying the well barrier envelope, identifying the well barrier elements, identifying examples of physical, procedural, and technical barriers, identifying permanent and temporary barriers, identifying passive and active barriers. And then they said that we should be including casing and cementing problems that have an impact on well control. We should be including risk awareness and risk management, and that involves foreseeing potential problems in order to be able to avoid them, understanding risk and how to manage risk, and then how to make changes, how to manage change, MOC, management of change, how to properly evaluate and assess and manage any modifications to the well plan. And then they said we should be creating an empowerment culture. And this one, they went into a little bit of detail on what they meant by that. And what they said was that there have been a number of instances where a driller who saw a warning sign, he first of all stopped doing what he was doing, and he picked up and he did a flow check. And they say there's no problem with that we're well trained in doing flow checks. Well, what happened when the well is flowing? The first thing the driller did was phone the tool push. I better get a second opinion on this. I think it's flowing. So he phones the tool push, and the tool push comes out and says, yeah, I think she might be flowing. Better phone the supervisor or the company man. So then they wait till the company man comes out and he says, yeah, it looks like it's flowing. Better shut her in. In the meantime, when this is all happening, it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and we're getting a much more dangerous situation. And they're saying that we should be creating that empowerment culture on the rig where the driller, he doesn't feel like he has to wait for approval to shut in, that he'll shut in and he knows he won't be in trouble when the tool push comes, that his first job is to secure the well. That's his very, very first priority. Secure that well and then call for help or call for assistance. So the 5 levels, what are the 5 levels, the new levels? Well, there's level 1. So who is that designed for? Well, it's at an awareness level, and it's designed for all those who are non-critical to well operationals, control operations. So it's people that on the peripheral, that they're not making decisions, anything to do with well control, but they may be anybody who has a secondary involvement in well control, such as warehousing staff that might be involved in, responsible for sending out well control equipment on time, logistics personnel, non-critical service personnel, non-critical support and office-based staff, executive secretaries, for example, or legal staff, or insurance staff, or corporate loans officers, or even investors. Media liaison personnel, somebody who's going to be talking to the media. They need to know a little bit about what they're talking about. And then there's camp personnel, crane operators, support, vessel staff, mechanics, electricians, welders, etc. Or anybody else who would benefit from having an overview of well control. Now, this is a nice to have ticket. It's not compulsory, so there's nobody saying, let me see your ticket. You can't get on the rig because you don't have it. In many cases, it's free online. There's a number of places where you can, they're available online. The next one is a level 2. It's mandatory for all rig workers who may directly contribute to the creation, detection, or control of an influx. So if your job is to walk on the tanks and notice, oh, I think we have a pit gain or a pit loss, or if you're to look at the shakers and say, I think, I see some the shakers are loading, which is a warning sign, or maybe alternatively, I might see that there's nothing on the shakers. We're drilling away and nothing coming over the shakers. And instead of just ignoring it, we should be reporting that. So anybody who should be reporting anything that might have a well control component to it. So that would be roughnecks, shaker hands, derrickmen, directional drillers, mud engineers, etc. Now, it's mandatory, as we say, and it must be completed within 1 year of commencing work on the drilling rig. So it must be on hand, in your hand, after 1 year, and there's no grace period on expired tickets. No prerequisites to take the course, so you don't need any previous well control training. The next level up is level 3, and so it's designed for anybody who's responsible for shutting a well in. Now this primarily means drillers and assistant drillers, so they must have it. It's mandatory for them. It's also some oil companies like to have their directional drillers and their managed pressure drillers trained to level 3 as well. So it's got no grace period on expired tickets. Now, the prerequisite for taking level 3 is you must have at least level 2 or an equivalent formal training. So there are a number of equivalencies but they must be accepted by the body, such as IWCF or IEDC must accept them as equivalency. Level 4 is for anybody who's involved in operational decision making and well designers. So that includes drilling supervisors, drilling superintendents, and drilling engineers, other office-based staff who are involved in well design, drilling managers, or any other operations decisions. It's mandatory. Now, the prerequisite is you must have level 3 or equivalent to attend this course, and no grace period is given for any expired tickets. Level 5 is an advanced course for anyone who has a key role in well design. It is principally designed for drilling engineers and drilling managers. Now, it's not to replace level 4, it's in addition to level 4. So it does not supersede level 4. So you still need your level 4, and it's not mandatory, it's a nice to have ticket. So what is a well-controlled incident? A well-controlled incident is any unsafe condition or conditions that can result in or have the potential to escalate to a loss of well control. So it's any actual or potential unplanned or uncontrolled release of well fluids. Now, a loss of well control is defined as an uncontrolled release of formation or other fluids, and this can either be uncontrolled flow between 2 or more formations. So that would be known as an underground blowout, for example. Or it can be flow to surface from the formations or other well fluids to surface, including through a diverter. So how common is a well control incident? Well, since starting its database in 2012, OGP is saying that they have issued an average of 8 well control incident alerts each year. So how would an incident impact us? Well, anything that shows a negative light on the industry affects us in some way. It jeopardizes your or your co-workers' personal well-being, includes overall levels of comfort, health, and happiness. It risks personal injury and even loss of life to both you or your co-workers. It diminishes your employment possibilities. I mean, if you burn your rig down, your chances of working on that rig anyway are slim to none. You lose your personal reputation, makes it much harder for you to find work to work elsewhere. So you walk in for a job interview and you say, yeah, I'm the guy who burnt the rig down. You're going to be not hired so quickly. Loss in corporate reputation, resulting in fewer contracts for your employer. The same thing happens to them. If you're a drilling contractor and you have a reputation of burning rigs down, oil companies aren't going to want to work for you, and vice versa. If you're a drilling contractor, you might not want to work for an oil company that has a reputation of burning rigs down. Capital losses mean smaller operating budgets. It's less money available for operations, so that's less job opportunities for you. It makes it harder for companies to raise capital. If you are an operator and you need to raise capital for a new project, you might find it harder because you have a bad reputation. Then there's the negative impacts on the environment. That's societal losses, degradation of the natural surroundings, diminished recreational enjoyment of the area. Local livelihoods can be destroyed, and we've seen that in the Gulf, real and perceived. Loss of public trust in our industry, both real and perceived impacts. Overregulation by local, state, and federal jurisdictions is a real possibility. Punitive measures in an attempt to abate public displeasure with the industry. Suspension of permits by overcautious jurisdictions, limiting your areas of operation in places like environmentally sensitive areas or close to. So avoiding an incident means managing the risk. So managing risks is a way of avoiding surprises by, well, foreseeing potential problems before they arise, and you need to do that with sufficient advance notice to be able to avert them. You need to be able to anticipate the problems and react to problems as they occur and avoid conditions that can lead to problems. And it's developing a sound plan beforehand, developing procedures for normal, likely, and most severe problems so everybody knows how to react. Keeping our plan updated with new information as it comes in, and keeping the rig crews informed of any new developments in that plan. So what is risk? Risk is a function of probability. It is the likelihood of an event happening within a specified time period and the severity of the consequences resulting from that event. So in order to try and quantify the whole thing of risk, it's quite usual to develop a risk matrix. So the severity of a risk is based on two criteria. The first one is that the more likely an event will occur, the greater the risk is, and the more severe the potential consequences of that event, the greater the risk. So using the risk management matrix, you can classify risk as being insignificant, marginal, moderate, or catastrophic. Now these descriptions can change from company to company and industry to industry. Or alternatively, you can call it low, moderate, high, or extremely high. There's various adjectives to describe risk. Here's an example of a lost time or a budget overrun matrix. So a risk matrix. On the left-hand side, you'll see that the column is entitled likelihood. And you'll see that there's a number of likelihoods. There's highly likely would be over a 90% certainty of happening. Very likely would be between 60 and 90% chance of happening. Moderate would be 40 to 69% chance of happening. Unlikely would be 10 to 39% chance of happening. And highly unlikely would be less than 10% chance. Now, these numbers are just examples. Your company may have different numbers. They may have different tolerances for risk. Then on the right-hand side of likelihood, you have severity. And you have a number of different ones ranging from insignificant, which means that the risk is easily managed as long as you follow, good drilling practice or company policy. Then no delays are expected, or there's going to be no cost overrun. The next one up would be marginal, and again it says delays up to 10% over your expected time, and the costs up to 10% over budget. And so then moderate would be delays from 11 to 49% over what you planned, and your costs between 109 and 149% over budget. Critical would be delays in excess of 50% over plan and costs greater than 150% of the budget. And then catastrophic would be complete loss of the project, complete abandonment of the well, or that would be catastrophic. So now you see that you can cross-reference the severity with the likelihood, and you come up with either low, moderate, high, or extreme. So that would be a lost time or a cost overrun. The next one we're looking at is a risk of injury matrix. It's the same idea. You have on the left-hand side, you have your likelihoods, and then you have the severity would be insignificant, no medical aid or first aid likely to be required. Marginal would be you need first aid administered on site, but no outside medics required. Moderate would be needing to go to at least one person going to a hospital as an outpatient. Critical would be requiring admission to a hospital overnight, but not requiring intensive care. And then catastrophic at the other end would be fatality or multiple critically injured people who require intensive care. That would be catastrophic. And again, you can see it can be classified depending on the severity and the likelihood, and you're given low, moderate, high, and extreme. So how does this all help us? How does risk management help in our project? Well, since every project comes with some inherent risk, I mean that you can't get away from risk entirely, systematic risk management helps us to identify, assess, rank all these risks and make them explicit. So everybody knows what they are. We all know what they are. We don't have some vague idea what they might be. We have quantized them. And this allows us to focus on the major risks of the project. And we're able to make informed decisions on specific risks. For example, dealing with gas migration in our cement, would we do with that? Minimizing potential damage should the worst case happen. Managing control on certain aspects of the well projects. Clarify and formalize the company's role and the roles of other companies and the roles of other people in the risk management process. So who's responsible for what in this risk management process? Identify the opportunities to enhance the project performance. So the goal of risk management then is to avoid having surprises by foreseeing potential problems ahead of time with sufficient advance notice to be able to avert them. Examples of foreseeable problems would be anticipating fractures and faults, and that information you might get from offset wells. The well down the road, they encountered a fractured and lost circulation at such a depth. So it's a very good chance that we should, might do the same, and so we might pay particular attention at that depth. So we should be able to anticipate and avoid lost circulation. Crews reacting to poor wellbore signs, such as cavings and cuttings coming over, not cleaning well, that sort of thing. So this allows us to avoid induced lost circulation, for example, in the case of not cleaning properly. monitoring the well for warning signs, and so the crew is able to take action to avoid or reduce the impact of a kick. Having a sound plan that is updated in real time, and so the crew is aware of hazards and able to avoid incidences. And having and following good company procedures or company policies, having them in place, and having the crews know what they are. So many risks, in fact most risks, can be managed by following company policy. The importance of emergency drills was another thing that was brought out by OGP. So NORSEC, which is the Norwegian standards, they were developed by the Norwegian petroleum industry to improve safety, primarily in the North Sea. They have something to say about emergency drills, and what they say is that they have identified regular, realistic well control and emergency drills to be a useful tool in reducing the risk of an event occurring. So emergency drills allow the crews to regularly practice procedures that are normally non-routine. Examples of emergency drills might be a pit drill, and that prepares the crew to react to a pit loss or gain in the shortest possible time, thereby minimizing the influx volume or the loss of overbalance. Then there's a trip pipe drill, prepares the crew to react to a warning sign with a bit off bottom, and is probably one of the most dangerous times in the life of a construction of a well, thereby preventing blowout while tripping. Strip drills allows the crews to practice stripping into the hole procedures, something that it's not a routine thing, something they wouldn't normally get to do. Choke drills, also something that's not normal, so it gives the crews practice in the choke manipulation, which they normally won't get unless they're on a simulator. Now experience shows me anyway, that crews that regularly perform choke drills are demonstrably more skillful at circulating out kicks. And I see that all the time on the simulators, that people who do this practice this regularly on the rig, they're very, very skilled, much more skilled than most people at choke manipulation. Diverter drills, they teach the crews how to react to a situation requiring a diverter. Now the reaction is different to that if you have a BOP stack, and OGP had something to say about that. What they said was that we are very good at teaching drillers to do a flow check if they see a warning sign. There's no problem with that, and we mentioned that before, that they will do a warning sign, they will do a flow check, but they said that's the inappropriate reaction because it becomes instinctual. If I ask a driller, I say, what do you do if you see a warning sign, and his instinct kicks in and says, well, I do a flow check. But that's only appropriate if you have a BOP stack in place. If you only have a diverter, then you're wasting time and you're making things worse. So your first thing should be to manipulate your diverter. And so if you're drilling with a diverter, you need to be doing diverter drills, and you need to keep on repeating them until the crews instinctively use the diverter instead of doing a flow check. So the reaction is different, and so we should be teaching them that. This is especially important with a manual sequencing type diverter. The reason is that they require a little bit more skill to operate, and so we should be practicing on that. BOP drills, they should be performed once a week. That's an API requirement. On bottom drills, they teach the crews how to react to a warning sign when you're drilling. BHA drills teach the crews how to react when the bottom hole assembly is in the stack. Out of the hole drills teach the crews how to react to flow when the pipe is out of the hole. And hang up drills is for subsea. It's self-explanatory. So how often should you repeat these emergency drills? Well, we've already mentioned that your BOP drill should be at least once a week. NORSEC says that the emergency drills should be repeated with sufficient frequency to achieve an acceptable response. So you keep on repeating these drills until you're satisfied that the response is sufficient. So also the supervisors should ensure that the crews alternate the type of drills that they hold. The drills are practiced and successfully completed before any potential upcoming event. An example we've given before is a diverter drill. So what are the consequences of not performing regular emergency drills? Well, the lack of a regular realistic drill has been identified as a contributing factor to a number of well-controlled instances worldwide. And again, I've given the example here of OGP explaining that people doing flow checks instead of operating the diverter. Management of change. So management of change is defined as a process to evaluate and properly manage any modifications to the design, control, or operations, including staffing of a covered process. The requirements are that no unintended hazards are introduced, all risks are identified and properly evaluated and minimized. The process must be kept current with up-to-date information, including safety information from hazard analysis, company and industry operating procedures, crew training records, and the mechanical integrity of the equipment, including the rating data. And information gathered from conducting your pre-startup safety review. So when do you need an MOC process? And it's any time we make a change or modify the design, control, or operations. For example, before any modifications are made to the cementing program. Now this has been identified as a problem worldwide. This has happened where field personnel make unauthorized modifications to the cementing program. They'll say, well, this is what we did in the last well I was on and it worked fine, or this is what I did in the last company I worked for, and we never had a problem with our cementing, so let's do that here. So without informing anybody, they make their own modifications in the field. Or before any modifications are made to the centralizer program, and that's what happened in Macondo. One of the things they did was they changed the centralizer program without doing any kind of a management of change process. So a system must be in place which describes how a change is identified, analyzed, and approved and implemented. So the company must have one of these in place, and it should include a definition of a temporary and permanent change, a method to approve these changes, a specified time limitation for temporary changes, communicating the changes to all the affected personnel. And this process must be completed before any changes or modifications to the design, control, or operations can be implemented. So we need a checklist to be in place to verify that any and all changes have been reviewed and analyzed before being implemented. The changes have been communicated to the affected personnel. All the required equipment is in place and the pressure function testing has been done as required. Emergency drills for the upcoming operations have been held and have achieved suitable results. The procedures and policies have been posted in the doghouse. The BOP diagram, and in the case of a subsea, the hang-off spacing is posted in the doghouse. The mast has been posted in the doghouse at the remote choke panel and beside the manual choke. The slow rates, and in the case of subsea, your choke line friction pressures have been established at the beginning of every shift and any other time specified by API. The choke and kill lines have been flushed and filled with current mud, and that's subsea. Your kill sheets are kept updated at the beginning of every shift with your pre-data. So you have all your kill sheets are up to date. All BOP valves are set to the normal drilling position during routine operations. And you're conducting daily meetings and briefings with all key personnel on board. Now you need some contingency planning and reporting policy here. So any operation with a well-controlled implication should also have an associated checklist and blowout contingency plan. This plan should include a strategy for killing the well, A list of all the equipment, personnel and services likely to be required for dealing with a blowout. Identification of the location of suitable contingency equipment and services likely to be needed for dealing with an incident. A list of measures required for limiting the consequences of an incident. Also, we need to be able to cool the bit. A formal method of recording and reporting an incident. A relief plan that should lubricate the bit, identification and the drill string. Locations for drilling. We also need to be able to provide the force needed to prevent formation fluids from entering the wellbore. Now, it's not the total force that is important, but rather it's the force per unit area, and this force we call pressure. This type of pressure is called hydrostatic pressure. Pressure is measured in units of pounds per square inches, psi, and the formula is pressure in psi equals pounds force divided by area in square inches. Also, the mud needs to prevent the formations from collapsing during the drilling process. So in that way, they provide the back pressure against unstable formations by increasing the hoop strength. Also, we need to minimize the damage to the formations during and after drilling the well. We minimize filtrate or solids invasion into the formation, minimize oil mud invasion into a gas reservoir, minimize water wetting clay minerals in the pore throats, especially in rocks such as limestones. Also, it needs to allow engineers to evaluate the reservoir before they complete the well. So it's no point in spending a whole bunch of money and completing a well if you're not able to evaluate it beforehand. So we can do that through wireline logging, logging while drilling, and drill stem testing. So there are a number of different ways of classifying muds, and we're not going to get into them right here. But one way is to either classify them as water-based or oil-based. Now you'll see the water-based mud is WBM and the oil-based mud is OBM, and we'll be using those abbreviations throughout the course to designate which is which. And so how do we differentiate between water-based and oil-based? Well, it's according to the liquid used in the base fluid, or what's known as the continuous phase of the mud. Now I want to look at some of the properties of mud. The first one is mud density. It's measured in pounds per gallon. Sometimes it's called the mud weight, and it's measured with an instrument called a mud balance. So here we've illustrated a pressurized scale, and it needs to be measured on a regular or continual basis to qualify the mud as a barrier to flow. So in order to qualify the mud as a barrier to prevent a blowout, the mud weight needs to be measured continually. Now, continually means that it's measured every so often. So it could be every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every hour. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as there's a regular schedule set up for measuring it. So it needs to be measured on a regular basis, on a continual basis, to qualify that mud as a barrier to flow. The next property I want to talk about is the marsh funnel viscosity. It's a measurement of how easily the fluid flows, specifically through a little nozzle in a funnel. It's recorded in seconds per quart. And so what we have illustrated here is a marsh funnel, which is filled up to that grating with mud, and then you measure how long it takes for 1 quart to flow out the bottom. So basically you fill up a viscosity cup to the 1 quart level, and you measure that in seconds. So it's the time taken to fill up a 1 quart viscosity cup with mud through a funnel shaped container that has a 3/16 inch nozzle at the bottom. And just an example of water will take about 26 seconds. The next property I want to talk about is the fluid loss test. It measures how fast the liquid phase inside the drilling mud under stress can move through the filter cake. It's an indication of the permeability of that filter cake of the mud. It's measured with an instrument called a filter press, And usually what you do is you subject the cake to a differential pressure, usually of 100 psi for a 30-minute stretch, and then you measure how much fluid comes out the bottom. So you report it in a cm cubed or in ml per 30 minutes. Next test is the pH test. It's a measure of the acidity of the mud, or more correctly, the hydrogen ion concentration of the mud. So some muds work best within certain pH environments, so it's important for certain types of mud that you must maintain the pH at a certain reading. Other reasons for maintaining it is that sometimes you could control it to prevent formation damage, or you want to minimize corrosion on your tubulars, and you use a litmus paper that turns a different color for each pH reading. Typical readings might be anywhere between 7 and 11. The next property is plastic viscosity, PV for short. So it's a function of the volume of the solids in the mud and also the viscosity of the fluid. So the greater the volume solids, the higher the plastic viscosity. But in addition to that, the higher the viscosity of the mud, the higher the plastic viscosity. It's influenced by the friction between the solids and the liquid phase of the mud. So it's a function of the specific surface area of the solids. So the greater the surface area of the solids in the mud, then the greater the plastic viscosity. Now that indicates then it's a function of the size of the solids, because small solids will have a larger surface area per unit volume than do larger solids, much larger. So it's an indication of the very, very fine solids. The greater the surface area of the solids, the higher the plastic viscosity. So a high plastic viscosity would indicate there are too many inert, ultra-fine solids, in other words, very, very small solids. You can reduce it by using solids control if they aren't too small, or through dilution. And it's measured with an instrument called a rheometer, reported in units of centipoise. And the plastic viscosity, then the formula for it is a 600 reading minus 300 reading. The next property is the yield point, abbreviated YP. It's a function of the chemical attractiveness and repulsiveness between the colloidal solids in the mud, and especially between the clays and the organic salts. It's used as an indication of the ability of the mud to lift the cuttings out of the well. So a high yield point would generally mean that it cleans better than one with a low yield point. A very high yield point, on the other hand, can indicate the presence of contaminants or chemical overtreatment. Other things that can affect it would be temperature. They'd affect the yield point in both water-based and oil-based muds. Deflocculants are used to reduce the yield point. And it's measured on rheometer the same way. It's reported in pounds per 100 square feet. And the formula is the 300 reading minus the plastic viscosity. Gel strengths are a measurement of the strength of the structures that are created within the mud by the ultrafine particles and the chemical ions when the mud is sitting still. It's also reported in units per 100 square inches. Now there are 3 times that they're tested, generally on a mud report. The first time would be immediately it stops turning, the rheometer stops turning, and it's sitting idle for 10 seconds. The second time would be after the mud is sitting idle after 10 minutes, and the third time would be 30 minutes. Now some people measure them after 4 hours in addition to that. So they indicate the ability of the mud to suspend solids when the pumps have stopped. Now the relationship between the 10-minute and the 30-minute is really important, because if you have them close together, that's called a fragile gel strength, and that means that after 60 minutes is probably not going to be much greater than after 30 minutes. However, If the difference between the 10-minute and the 30-minute is greater, it's called a progressive gel strength, and that would indicate that it might get really hard to break circulation after, an extended period of sitting idle. Now, it's also incumbent on the crews to monitor the hole cleaning. The derrickmen should be doing this on a regular basis, as should the roughnecks. So keep a close eye on the volume of cuttings coming over the shakers. The volume of the cuttings on the shaker should equal the volume being generated by the bit. So the first warning sign of an inadequate hole cleaning would be a lack of cuttings coming over. Consequences would be that you start pressuring up the wellbore and inducing fractures in the wellbore and causing lost circulation. And then once you've got lost circulation, you start degrading your overbalance, your hydrostatic overbalance, and you end up possibly taking a kick. Now, the hydrostatic overbalance is the primary barrier to flow. So if you start degrading that, you no longer have a primary barrier to flow, so you're in a dangerous situation. I want to talk a little bit about pressure. It's a measurement of force pounds per unit area. So in this drawing, we have 1,000 pounds of force acting on the bottom of the vessel, and you'll see that the vessel has an area of 100 square inches. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that each square inch is supporting 10 pounds. So we would say it has a pressure of 10 pounds per square inch. For every square inch has 10 pounds on it. So the formula for pressure is force divided by area. And so 1,000 divided by 100 gives us 10 psi. Okay, so that's the unit 1. So I'm just going to summarize what we've learned, or what you should have learned by now. So after completing this lecture, you should now know the importance of well-controlled training and why we need to improve the competence of the industry. You should also know and understand the 5 levels of training and who should take each level. You should know what a well-controlled incident is and how it can impact us, how to manage risks and avoid an incident. You should also know the nature of risk and how we can quantify it using a matrix. You should also know the goal of risk management. You should know the importance of emergency drills and how often they should be repeated, how to manage change, and you should be able to give examples of checklists that need to be in place before commencing operations. You should know the essential elements of a blowout contingency plan. You should know the main function of drilling mud, and you should know the main properties of drilling mud. You should also be able to define pressure. So that concludes Unit 1. Now just quickly, I want to briefly go over what Unit 2 is going to cover. So it's going to cover much of the new material introduced into well-controlled curriculum for Level 2. It also becomes a review for Level 3 and 4 candidates and should not be completely ignored by drillers and supervisors. So the subjects we're going to cover will be the circulating system. We're going to do calculator exercises. We're going to do solids control, calculating area and volume. We're going to do an overview of the different types of rigs and the different types of BOP stacks. And we're going to do an introduction to fluids.